As the choir was singing that this morning, I was thinking that's another one of those songs my father used to sing quite a bit. And I played that for him one time. The only difference is he sings it in a different key. But so as I was playing, my mind went back to all those years I've heard him sing that song. My message this morning, as I was preparing, caused me to go to some very scary memories. Some very scary memories from my childhood that even today, when I hear of certain things happening, it causes me to really have issues. Our scripture comes from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 15, verses 1 through 10, as we have read earlier. And talking about leaving the 99 in the fold to go and search for the one. My topic, Jesus has been looking everywhere for you. And God's desire is that we all enter into a special place with him. And what I hope to do is look at this parable in light of what God has done to seek us out. Because certainly, one of the things that he does is he seeks us out. There was a gospel song that was sung a long time ago. It was called, "I Kept On Searching Till I Found Him." And in essence, if we really want to think about that song, we were searching for things to satisfy us, but he was the one searching for us. How far and where would he go to find you? That's the question that I want to end up with today. How far would he go to find you? Hey, I'm with you, Reverend Taylor. He went a long way to find me. And we're going to get to that today, because even this morning when I came to church, on the way to church, I was thinking about some of the places I've been. Some of the dark places I've been. Some of the scary places I've been. Let me not get ahead of myself, because I've been meditating on this for a little while here. Now, I know in this area, since you got the same channels that we got in D.C., as well as the Baltimore channels. You got Channel 4, Channel 5, Channel 7, Channel 9, Channel 2, Channel 20, all right, and Channel 11. Those, the Channel 2 and 11 were Baltimore. What was the other one? Channel 13 was the other Baltimore channel, right? Yeah, all right. And then Channel 20, and then Channel 14 was WOOK. Wonderful Wook, all right? But there was this commercial, and I don't remember whether it was on Channel 5 or whether it was on Channel 7. But if I start the commercial, I bet some of you can finish. The commercial was, "It's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your children are?" Now, I remember very vividly some events from my childhood, probably around about the time I was in the 3rd grade. And I'm going to share this with you because these events happened seemingly one right behind the other. And I used to walk home from school for lunch from Keene Elementary School all the way over to First Place Northeast in Chillingham. I know you know where it is, Brother Sammy, because that's not that far from Coolidge, all right? And so that was basically about 1.5 miles, maybe 2 miles, by myself before my sister started school. I walked home from school for lunch alone. That was one of the things that you could do back then. Today it would be unheard of. All right? Because of the possibility of so many things that could happen. Now let me tell you where I'm going. Some of you might already anticipate where this story is going. There was, and I don't know, I guess the reason I remember this little girl's name is because she has the same name as my great-grandmother, where my father lives in the house that was my great-grandmother's house. This little girl named Harriet Jackson went missing. She never turned up coming home from school. And I remember this picture of this little black girl with these pigtails off the side of her head with the little ribbons, because this was before ponytail rings. She had little pink ribbons on the sides of her head and this cute little smile. Her body was never found. Now, I don't know whether you all ever saw that, but it was all on the news for days. And what was odd is because they rarely put pictures of black folks in the paper. But this little girl went missing. And she joined the ranks of 2 boys, one black and one white, and another little white girl. All of them around the same age as me. And I remember seeing them with their pictures in the paper. All 4 of these children, these 2 little black kids and these 2 little white kids, missing. And it seemed like within days of each other, the incidents were days apart. Harriet's body was never found. The others, their bodies were found either in a construction site, a wooded area, buried in shallow graves. And I remembered hearing the adults talking and reading the articles about how their bodies had been tortured and horrifically violated. I won't go into the details, but I remembered hearing that. And these were all things that happened in days apart in 1958 in the area where I lived and where I walked home for lunch. And I remembered they were saying that in the area there had been seen a green 1946, 47 Chrysler or Dodge or something pale green driving around the area. And I remembered one day while walking from school, a pale green Chrysler. As I was walking by a wooded area at Rock Creek Church Road, getting ready to make my turn onto New Hampshire Avenue to cross the B&O Bridge to go home. And this man asked me, did I know where the Eastern Star Nursing Home was? That was only a block from where I lived. And I stood there and told him, it's this way, and this way. And he said, get in and show me. And I stood there and looked. And I was about the distance from his car as I am from these two deacons sitting on that first row, and he kept saying, get in and show me. And he reached over and he opened the door, and I'm thinking, no. And there was a car full of teachers, and I can remember seeing them as plain as day. I can remember seeing the 6th grade teacher, Miss Zucker. And I can remember seeing a couple of other teachers, and they were honking the horn. And the teacher that was driving, writing down a tag number, and the man drove off. And I'm standing there looking, and they could tell I was horrified, and I'm steady backing up. And they said, you did the right thing, back up. And I said, I was getting ready to run. They said, go home. I ran the rest of the way home, and that car was circling around the very place that he was asking me directions for. Never found that little girl's body. They found the other children's bodies, but nobody was ever charged, to my knowledge, in any of those cases. Those things stuck in my mind. I overheard the adults talking. Those things stuck in my mind. As a child, I got troubled by that. And it caused me to have nightmares. And I never shared that even with my parents as to what happened. But days later, all through the school, and I understand that they were telling me that this was then included in the curriculum, where J. Edgar Hoover had sent out things to include in the curriculum about child safety, walking home from school, and never to talk to this person, and if you saw this happen, or if you saw these kinds of cars, or this kind of, write down the tag numbers, or let somebody know. And I remember that very vividly. Then I remember something that happened to a little child that lived next door. One of the children that lived next door to me got into trouble at school, and he ran away from home for fear of what would happen when he got home. And I remember when his mother walked up and down the streets in the neighborhood looking, thinking that this little boy was just goofing off, trying to avoid the inevitable. And you know how parents did then. They walked the streets with their switch or whatever the weapon of behind destruction they were going to use. But when darkness came, she realized something was wrong. And she called the police, and the police came, and they started asking questions. And about that time, fear began to grip my body. And you know the pictures that came to my mind. Little Harriet Jackson and those 3 other little kids whose bodies were discovered in all of those places. And to this day, I can still see those pictures of those shallow graves and police lines around them. That just brings to mind horrible things. And here, right next door to me, I'm thought, what if this has happened to that little boy that I played with, that my sister played with, that me and his brother played together? Wasn't long after that, German shepherds from the police department were sniffing his clothes and going through the streets looking. Parents were in their cars going around looking, and they couldn't find him. And I overheard the adults talking about them and talking about the search, and all night people were concerned. Those nightmares, I still think about that. And the kids were asked questions. Then later, when the search went on, and I realized that the search was motivated because of the love. The world seemed to stop. The whole neighborhood took on an ominous, dead kind of aura because somebody was missing. No child in that neighborhood went out to play that evening. Every child was told, you stay in the house. And none of us balked about it. We stayed in the house. That search went on. They kept looking, they kept looking, they kept looking. And that morning, I didn't sleep that night. I tossed and turned all night long. And that morning, as my mother was talking to the little boy's mother next door, and the walls of those detached houses, y'all down here call them duplexes. We called them semi-detached. We bought the one on one side, they bought the one on the other. And I could just hear the muffled voices as she talked from their bedroom, and my mother was talking from her bedroom. And as I looked out, here this little boy comes walking up in front of our house. And he walked next to the steps of his house and looked up as if to say, do I dare go in? Or do I turn and run? And I hollered while my mother was talking, and you know, for that reason, I knew it was okay to interrupt grown folk conversation. As I stood at the window and I looked out because I was just so worried, and I said, Mommy, there he is, there he is, there he is, there he is. And she got off the phone, she just left the phone and ran down to the door and opened the door and reached over the railing, and she reached down and she said, baby, come here. And she reached down and she grabbed him and she hugged him. And his mother met him at the door, and she didn't meet with the straps. She met with her arms, and she opened and she hugged him and she cried. And these two ladies were hugging this child as I'm standing behind looking. And I can see that picture just as vivid as if it happened yesterday. Of them just so glad that this child was alive. and virtually unharmed. A little dirty, a little tired, but unharmed. That night, all I could have thought about that night was that pale green Chrysler. But here he was, safe and unharmed. Those searches motivated by love came to an end. And his father, when he saw him, when they finally found him and he came back to the house, because you know there were no cell phones. He had stopped at a payphone and they said, "He's here." And he came home and they got a hold of the other parents and they said, "He's home," and everybody went home. And when he got home, the boy was sitting in the bathtub and his mother was giving him the bath. And the father, who was a military person, stood there, great big strapling man, and he broke down and he cried. He said, "Son, I don't care whatever the consequences are. I don't care whatever you do. Don't ever do that again." And he knelt down and he grabbed and hugged his wet, naked body and just wept for this child that he thought he would never see again. When I think of this parable of the lost sheep, can you think of what that says about us when we were lost, when we were out of fellowship, when we didn't know Christ? How he searches for us. You know where that little boy had spent his night? He had spent his night in an apartment building that was being constructed down in the basement under a stairwell, sleeping on a pile of bags of cement, just less than a half mile from home. So close, and yet so far. This parable speaks of how Christ will leave the flock that is safe in a safe place and search everywhere for just one that is lost. Can you imagine Christ frantically trying to reach mankind in his sinful state? Can you imagine the pain he endured just to reach us where we were? And oftentimes, all we have to do, even when we mess up after we're saved, is go to him and say, "God, I'm so sorry. I messed up again. God, I'm so sorry. My head was hard again. God, I'm so sorry. I let my temper get the best of me again. God, I'm so sorry. You told me what to do and I did my own thing anyway. God, I'm so sorry." My God. Can you imagine the pain he endured to reach us where we are? But you know, he searched for us just like they searched for that little boy next door. Let me tell you where he searched for us. He searched everywhere to find us where we were lost. And he'd been searching for a long time. He searched the sacrifice he had to make for Adam and Eve. But we weren't there. We weren't there when Adam and Eve messed up. Somehow or another, we had just been missed when he threw the animal skins on them covered with innocent animal blood. He searched for us through Cain's imperfect sacrifice. We weren't there. He searched through the sacrifice of Isaac. We weren't there. He searched in the lion's den where Daniel was, but we weren't there. He searched through the fiery furnace, but all he found was Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. His search led him to a place where he had to go up high. Because even today, sometimes, I don't like planes, but sometimes when they go searching, you can't find something on the ground. You've got to go up high. I'm almost finished now. In order to find where you and I are hiding. I don't know about you, but in order to find me, he had to go up very high. He had to go up so high, he had to climb up a rugged hill. And he had to carry something to go up a little higher on, called an old rugged cross. And when he got there, he had to go up to a place where he could stay a little while and search. So he couldn't slide down or come down. So they nailed him to that old rugged cross. And as he was nailed there on that old rugged cross, a searchlight of love was turned on. And the searchlight of love was turned on and shined down on the ground through the blood that was shed. And when it fell down to the ground, the love that was shed through the blood that oozed out of his veins down into a pool, and the hymnologist said there is a fountain filled with blood drawn from Emmanuel's veins, and sinners plunge beneath that flood and lose all their guilty stains. That blood found me where I was lost and hiding. Found me one day hiding in the shallow grave that Satan had dug for me. Found me hiding, being mutilated and tortured and abused and misused. And Satan says, I've got him, and I'm not going to turn him loose till I've killed him. Maybe that's a story similar to yours. But you see, Christ went looking, and he was determined he was going to bring me safely home, just like that little boy. And his love, while he was up there hanging high, found me where Satan had me bound. And when he found me, he said to me, I've got you now. I've been looking everywhere for you. Can't you just hear him say, I've been looking for you everywhere, just for you. I thought I had lost you, but I found you just in time. If I had waited just a little longer, you might have been gone, but I found you just in time. Now I'm not going to let you out of my sight. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Can't you just see him now? Telling you, I found you now. Stay in the house with me. Stay in the house with me. Because now you're safe. I've been looking everywhere, just for you, and you, and you, and you, and you, and yes, me. And where we were thinking, Surely, I can't go home. Surely, I'm too far gone. Do I go in or do I stay away? Jesus' love reached out, reached over the fence of where you were in bondage, embraced you and says, come here, baby. I'll never let you go again. Whatever the consequences, don't leave me again, because I will never, never leave you or forsake you. Is there one? Is there one? I'm going to extend the invitation.
My God.
The Lord is speaking to somebody right now. You've been lost. You've been abused, misused, mistreated by the devil. He's got a shallow grave dug for you. But Jesus is saying, not so. Not so.